Oi, oi, hello and welcome to a new Which Bookie YouTube series. This one is geared towards the Cheltenham Festival. Now, I know there is quite a good bit of content that goes out there towards Cheltenham. There's a big reason for that. It is the pinnacle of jumps racing. We've got the November meeting just around the corner. It's thick and fast this time of year. We've got some real good action on both sides of the Irish Sea. That continues all the way through December. January, there's not a lull, but there's a period of change. We'll have seen maybe the first half of the season. Thoughts and race targets may be changing. We kick ourselves into the Dublin Racing Festival for February. Then, of course, the Cheltenham Festival itself in March. But there are clues that continue throughout the season. Aintree Festival, there will be some horses that are geared towards there because of missed engagements in Cheltenham. There are horses that will take in both of those festivals. We have Punchestown at the end of the season too. But let's make no mistake, the Cheltenham Festival is the home of jumps racing and it is something to be excited about. So this series through the coming months is open to interpretation. And what I mean by that is we don't definitely have a strict plan of where we're going to go with this. I've got a bit of a guide of where things will be going. So in this particular first episode, I will be giving you my best bet for each day of the Cheltenham Festival at this stage from an Antepost perspective. That way you can put these together in a lucky 15 if you're that way inclined. A few cheap singles, but it is essentially an opinion-based video in here. I'm not trying to be held to account and say that anybody should be doing these things, but if someone was to ask my opinion on who would you fancy for each day of the festival, well, I want to tell you because some people do want to hear that. Now, as we go through the season, there's going to be some more in-depth and a bit more topical stuff, I guess, that we can be going through. But I'm keen to know what you guys would like to hear or what you would like to see, particularly from a regular segment in this show. So drop that in the comments below with what you might think could be a helpful piece of insight through the jump season gearing towards Cheltenham. And of course, each month that we do these episodes, I'll be keen to hear your thoughts again. So make sure you're subscribed to the Which Bookie YouTube channel. Make sure you like the video as well. If you do like the video, that helps us with YouTube, pushing this out to like-minded people. But let's crack on, I guess, with the Cheltenham Festival talk. So the concept for this one, like I say, is probably going to be geared a little bit more towards Antepost bets because I think it's important for us to look for value through the season. You can't just produce a video on a particular date and be able to definitely find a wager. So throughout the season on the whichbookie.co.uk website, there are Antepost pieces that will be written by the likes of Will Smith where you can find thoughts on there. But when we can couple that with the videos and tell you guys what we fancy, we'll look to do that too. As I say, there'll be some topical stuff, trainer stable talks. There'll be big events that have happened at the weekend and we can talk about some of those actions. So it's going to be a good piece and I'm keen to get you guys involved as well. So if you ever have any questions, drop them in there. We will get to them. So look, let's crack on because we know I like to talk and we know I like to talk about Cheltenham. So kicking off on the Tuesday, this video as well, right? I've prepared because I do look at Cheltenham regularly and I feel like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this sphere. This video is being recorded at the moment while I'm going through the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Maybe a case there's a few little quick edits that go within the video, but I wanted to keep it raw and say to you guys, almost the same as if you just caught me in the pub and said, Dave, what do you fancy on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? I want to let you know that these are these thoughts. Obviously, well-researched and substantiated claims, I guess, are a better way to do things. But in this instance, when you're this far out from Cheltenham, sometimes we can overthink something. Sometimes we can look for comments and sometimes we can get pushed away from what our gut feeling is telling us. And of course, when you're going through a Cheltenham Festival and you're looking at potentially building up a bit of an Antepost portfolio, it's okay to have more than one bet in a race. So just want to really get that off at the top of the show. There'll be different, I guess, ways of doing it for people, and there'll be different methods that people prefer to apply. Some people like to wait till the week and bet with the best odds guaranteed or when the non-runner money back comes in there. Of course, taking risks this far out, you need to be hopefully finding a bit of value, but a lot of guesswork is needed this time of the year. There are lots of places where you can find some information, or you can see market moves about horses that have been hyped up and might be doing things, but talks on the turf. And also injuries, niggles and things happen. So look, early thoughts on things that could be interesting for, especially day one of the Tuesday. I'll give a little insight, I think, for every single race. I don't want to keep this video very long, but a quick run through. And then off the back of that, we can quickly surmise what I recommend might be the best bet for each of the days, right? Supreme Novices Hurdle, Bambino Fever heads the market. There's My Daddy Paddy, there's Place to the Nation, Love Me Tender. They are 20-1 and shorter, those horses. The first horse that jumps in, though, that I would have under consideration for a supreme bet at this stage, again, one of those that I'd like to get in the book, is El Kairos, 25-1 top price. Now, Was with David Maxwell, a horse that I really liked in bumpers for last season. The fact that David Maxwell's hanging up his boots and has now sold these horses, coupled with the fact that this went to Gordon Elliott, £410,000 was paid for the horse. There's a scope to probably argue that that's a pretty good deal. Even in the Racing Post comments, the purchasers suggested that he turned down an offer for £600,000 for this horse. But he looks like a really nice type. The fact that he's gone to a big outfit as well would be a positive for me. He's just the type of horse that at this stage in the season, I'd probably like to get something on the book with him, and he definitely looks like an out-and-out two-miler as far as I'm concerned. So there's going to be lots of horses in there. We know we want to try and get a William Mullins horse in the book too. I would probably prefer on the William Mullins angle to try and wait a little bit to see where the pecking order sits or who goes where. But I do think the intention of Gordon buying this horse, maybe, as I say, for the amount that he went for, he could have gone a little bit higher, but I think it just speaks volumes that probably, I know the horse won't have been in the care for very long, but probably this horse is going to progress loads through the season. But I also think it shows that Gordon Elliott maybe is thinking this is the horse that I would want to gear towards a Supreme. It's not very often you get the chance to buy those types of horses. So 25 to 1 for him looks like he should be getting in the book. So I feel like that's probably going to be as close as we can get to already spoiling the Tuesday bet of what I would recommend across the 4 days if we were having a bet on each of the days. Now, the Arkle is an interesting market. It has tightened up a little bit at the front with Copec de Boards shortening up after a William Mullins stable tour. And then I think as well, there's been Romeo Cooley that's come out and run. Maybe his trip is unconfirmed of where he'll go this season. Lulamba, Nicky Henderson's stable tour was possibly alluding to the fact that the horse will go chasing, but wasn't definitely saying that was going to be the case. So he's tightened up, rightly so, at the top of it. Salvatore Mundi came good in Aintree. I still think he's a nice type, but we know with probably the William Mullins pecking order, I know Duke de Geneva a good few years back came and won the Arkle and probably wasn't looking at the first string, but Copec de Board's supposed to be going chasing. Copec de Board looks like a phenomenal horse. He was a very good winner of the Supreme. It's a good test going into this race. So I think looking away from him in the Arkle betting would be the wrong thing to do. And he might be one that if you wanted to put into some multis at the start of the season, I can only really see his price shortening. He is the type that could make a mistake and his price could go out and you could think, actually, now I want to get him in the book. But typically with the Arkles, you want your unbeaten horses. You can get horses that maybe have fallen or potentially have been beaten due to a big mistake. Duvan had that, didn't he, behind Clarkham, I think it was. But overall, I would suggest that Copec de Board is probably the right sides to be on for the Arkle, but maybe tighten up a bit too much now at the top of the market, but we wouldn't say that after a chase debut, would we? Champion Hurdle, because we've had a bit of a rejig now on the Tuesday. The Champion Hurdle picture is, for me, a real murky market. The new line, I want to say Warrant's favouritism is probably too strong a statement. Warrant's being very well respected. I thought his novice win last year was pretty good, but I do think he beat horses that need further or didn't have their ideal conditions, but he still had to do it the hard way. It was still a very good effort. 4 to 1 about him for a Champion Hurdle, though, it is a bit tight as far as I'm concerned, but I was sort of against him last year for a similar reason, only for the fact that I thought his price looked shorter than his actual implied chance at the stage, and I was thinking you've got months under the bridge. So the new line, I think I'd just leave him for a period of time. How much is he going to be able to prove himself on this side of the sea? I don't know. If he takes the scalp of a Constitution Hill early on, will people just say that Constitution Hill's gone at the game, or will it be given the credit that it deserves? I don't know about that. We've got the question mark where Lottie Mouth will go. This probably is the place for her to come, give it a stab. But the Mare's Hurdle, like the 2.5 mile trip, maybe is our optimum. State Manager standing dish in this race. Amsterdam for Willie Mullins, as well as another horse that looks like the one to take a step forward. William Money's the one that I'll probably be interested in a Champion Hurdle from this far out. Still top price 16 to 1, think it looks fair. He's got about as much to improve as the new line has. He is a year older, so you could argue that the new line's got a steeper upward curve this season, but I'd probably argue that William Money's the year forward you would need to be to win a Champion Hurdle. The big price discrepancy between the two of those, like I say, the new line 4 to 1, William Money top at 16 to 1. General 14 to 1 though. He'd be my sort of idea in a Champion Hurdle of someone that I might put in there. So look, if I had to say to you at this particular stage, a horse that I think I'd recommend getting in the book for Tuesday, in terms of one single bet, if we're building a lucky 15, I think Copec de Board at 7 to 2 is probably the right one. If we're talking about potential bets to have small interest, whether you've got free bets or you're trying to build a bit of a book, I do think El Kairos is worth getting in at some point through the season, and it might not be at this stage, but it also might be if he comes and wins an ordinary maiden. I think William Money's tightened up because we know that's where he's going, and I think in a murky-ish looking Champion Hurdle market, he could be the one that benefits from that, but he might not be the standout contender come Cheltenham, so there's a question of how short his price might go. So yeah, overall I'd say Copec de Board would be the suggestion for Tuesday, but a few horses I think on the top of my mind are worth bearing in mind this far out. Moving on to the Wednesday, the Turners Novices Hurdle is wide open. Bundles of horses in there with all sorts of different profiles and perspective chances in there. It's 14 to 1 the bar, 14 to 1 bar the field. Dr. Demesnil is the favourite at the moment at 14 to 1. Love Me Tender's behind. Bambino Fever, again, she's a mare probably going to be targeting the Mare's Novice, but she features towards the top because of what she did in the bumper last year. So probably a market that I don't really want to get involved in at this stage. We've had years where Forheens and Sam Crows and Envoy Lands are ones to get stuck into early, but I don't feel that at the moment. Now, the Brown Advisory Novices Chase, we've got Final Demand, a horse I've already mentioned in reference to the new Lion, or at least I've talked about him being a horse that needs further. He looks a staple for a Brown Advisory Novices Chase. He's 3 to 1 top price. Some of the horses that are in behind are nice progressive types, potentially more geared on this side of the sea, so they could come forward. And it might be the case that people are thinking, well, I think he might be the winner, Final Demand, but I might want to find something a bit of each way value. My view on that this far out is that it's risky. Injuries and all those sort of things can happen. And if you're tying up your price Antepost for value, then for me, with the place terms, potential field sizes, it's a risky one to try and take on. I just think Final Demand at 3 to 1 just looks rock solid for this race. But, you know, we're not here to listen to me talk about favourites in every single race. They're favourites for a reason, though. We're going to have to give them a mention. Champion Chase on the Wednesday is another one that's an interesting looking market, purely for the fact that wide open this year, and we've had a lot of favourites that have bombed and been well beaten in there. Marine Nationale and Sagino are joint favourites at 4 to 1. If you want to take the general consensus, though, Sagino's warranting favouritism or looking more likely to be a favourite, given he's as short as 11 to 4 in places. Marine is a standard 4 to 1 across the board. Now, I rate Sagino. I think this horse is very, very special. There's lots of things that could be brought into consideration to do with his age, his experience, about why he might not be able to go and win a Champion Chase, but he looks like the one that does warrant being right at the top of the market, and of course he is sat right there. I don't know whether Madborough will come this trip. I think maybe the Ryanair could be a plan, but it depends how they slot him with other horses, but he's a nice horse. I do think Sagino's got a far better chance than a Madborough would have in this race. Ilete Tomps became a very good horse at the back end of last season. Big wins, and he's got a lot of Grade 1 wins now, and he's beaten quite some notable names. He's a top price 10 to 1 here, which is probably another one that's interesting and might be one to get in the book at some stage through the season. I don't really see where else he'd go unless they decided to swerve Cheltenham with him, but I don't see the benefit in doing that. Jonbon, as big as 14 to 1, probably could be quite big. Although he is older, he's probably looking slower now and is probably Ryanair bound. He's just the type of horse that you never know if this race cut up or he showed a little bit more, or they train him differently and he just ends up having a bit more speed or something. He was an odds-on favourite for this race, wasn't he, when beaten last year? So could look overpriced, but it wouldn't lure me in at this stage. So I think all in all, when we look at this market, Marine Nationale has been a much improved horse last season. His runs over Christmas were eye-catching enough to suggest he could go well in the spring, which is exactly what he did. He backed it up at Punchestown after. He does have a bit of a breathing issue, so there's question marks about him sustaining this top-end performance for year after year. Sagino potentially has those questions, having not been seen all the time every season, but there's lines around that are excusable to do with something that's not going to be an ongoing thing. The stable form the year before and then an infection in his leg. Look, that's a real tight one there. The more I talk about it, the more I feel like I don't know where to go with it. But I do think that Ilete Tomps at 10 to 1 would be a recommendation. He's a bottom price 6 to 1 somewhere, but I feel like he's the most obvious one that's definitely going in. We know where he's going to be, and it might be the case that he disappoints, but he's also the type of horse that in and around Christmas time over in Ireland, he might pick up these races. Marine Nationale might have a slow start to the season like last year. And of course, if Ilete Tomps is doing that, his price is just going to contract. And in beating someone like a Marine Nationale, his price was only going to go out. He looks the obvious shortener. So probably for the day 2 recommendation, I would be suggesting now that Ilete Tomps in the Champion Chase is the place to go. Again, talking about potentially like a lucky 15 and merging things in there, I wouldn't put people off putting your Copec de Wards and Final Demand in a multiple bet at this stage. You can get good value in accumulators and multiple bets, given the fact you get good value in the individuals as well. So while lots of people won't want to be tying up chunks of money in those shorter price horses, which you may almost feel like you need to do to get some extra value out of it, putting in some of these in these multiples, I know there's the risk of non-runners and stuff, but for a small fun bet, they could be 2 odds-on shots on the first 2 days that you're getting 3 to 1 and 7 to 2 about at this point. So that feels the sensible way to look at Wednesday, I suppose. Moving on to Thursday, already loosely touched on the Mare's Novice Hurdle via Bambino Fever. She's a 4 to 1 favourite for this race. I'm not entirely sure I trust bumper winners going into the next season, but look, lots of horses have done well. I've already mentioned Envoy Land that's gone and knocked up the 2 of those. So respectfully, she's the right favourite at 4-1. Would I be able to pick anything to go against her? No. Is she the type of horse that maybe you'd want to get in those lucky 15s for multiples just for the sake of taking up a place on a horse that could be odds on the day? Probably she is. So that's where I'd sit with that race on the Thursday, and I don't think there's too much more I could want to say about that now. Now, of course, the Mares' Hurdles moved to the Thursday. Different track now this time, so it's going to be a slightly different test. We have Lossiemouth at the front of the market. Now, I think that this is Lossiemouth's trip, and I think this is the race that Lossiemouth would win if she came to it. But I know there's the target, or the talk that probably the champion hurdles would be the way to go. Now, at this stage, you're guessing. So, Woodhoo in second favourite at 4-1. She's a real good mare, isn't she? She would be the one that would massively benefit if Lossiemouth went to a champion hurdle, and she would be the one that would end up going and winning this race, and she'd be a lot shorter than the 4-1. But I think she would be a lot shorter than the 4-1. But I don't think she's been missed in the consideration of her price currently, in the thought that Lossiemouth might not be it. That's a bit of a wordful, but let me explain. Woodhoo would not be 4-1 if Lossiemouth was definitely coming to this race. And I know we've got injuries and things like that in there as well. So it's been considered in the price already. But obviously, if she doesn't run, she probably should be shorter than 4-1. So again, tiny bit murky within there. I tend to think I want to leave the Mares' Hurdle alone at this stage. People have been bitten in previous years about getting good prices on horses, and then they switch to different races, or it doesn't quite work out. So yeah, I'm happy enough just to leave that one alone. If Lossiemouth goes there, I don't see how she gets beat. If she doesn't go there, Woodhoo should be the beneficiary of that, but I'm taking the risk that Lossiemouth doesn't go there. If she does, I feel like I'm betting a dead horse. So at the prices, I'd leave it as it was. Stayers Hurdle, that's moved to before the Ryanair Chase now. The way they've done the feature races, the Stayers Hurdle's sort of dropped as the championship race, which disappoints me as a fan of the stay-in hurdlers. But we've got talk now that Ballyburn, we've had lots of talk from Willie Mullins that Ballyburn is going back over hurdles, and he is being geared towards a Stayers Hurdle. It's a race with Willie Mullins. He has had some success in it. He won with Penhill, didn't he? That was his first start after winning Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. He's had some other winners in there as well. The name just jumps off the back of my head at the time that we're doing this straight away. I think of a Townhead horse that was on there, but he's had chances, but he's also had some sort of failed chases in the same season that he sent there too. So I like the approach with this. We know that it's a division that isn't dominated by a horse. Teahupoo is a very good staying hurdler, but he got beat by Bob Ollinger last year. Got great form at the festival. I don't really see how Teahupoo would have won last year unless the ground was maybe a bit softer, or I don't even think tactically it was any different. We just sort of know the ceiling of a Teahupoo. Ballyburn definitely has the scope and potential to be much better than a Teahupoo. And when we talk about Teahupoo, he won the race a couple of years ago. He was 12-1 at the start of the season. He was about 6-1 for the start of the season last year. He's 11-2 this year. Like, we know where we are with him. There's always a time potentially to get him in the book. And he runs in the Hatton's Grace at the start of the season. He's expected to go and run well in that, or at least win that race. If he doesn't, he's probably a horse that, don't know, maybe they'll change a different approach. But for a horse that doesn't get seen very often, 11-2 about him just doesn't tempt me in the slightest. I'd get him in the book nearer the time if I thought actually he's still the standout horse, rather than finding ones to go against him. The Yellow Clay from the same stable, I love that horse. He could be the right type to do this, but the Yellow Clay versus Ballyburn, there's no question who would win that in my opinion. So I think Ballyburn's going to be probably a Stayers hurdler for the next couple of seasons at least, and Willie Mullins targeting a horse for this race wouldn't necessarily be by design. I know the Penhill thing, he went there straight after and he managed to win the race, but I mean, plan A wasn't to not run for the whole season, was it? So I like the fact that he's targeting towards there. We talked about Gaelic Warrior a couple of years ago when he went and won an Arkle about being a Stayers hurdle horse, and he just didn't gear it towards it. I mean, from my perspective, this is the Willie Mullins Closutton horse for the first time I can probably remember. Feel free to mention in the comments if I've missed anything there, but the first time I can remember Willie Mullins actually fully targeting a horse towards a Stayers hurdle with intention. So yeah, there's lots of those 3 mile Christmas hurdle races and stuff in Ireland, isn't there, where Ballyburn probably just going to mop the lot up. I think 5-1 about him is still very, very, very fair. So he would definitely be my recommendation for a bet on the Thursday. Races like the Ryanair Chase are tricky ones even near the start of the race. Lots of water to go under the bridge between now and then, but it is turning into a better race every single year. It's rather than being not your champion chase horses or not your Gold Cup horses. It is a bit more targeted now. You're looking at Factor Files, Gaelic Warriors. There's big difference in prices with those ones. So Factor Files top price 5-2, short as 15-8. Gaelic Warriors as big as 12-1, as short as 6-1 for the Ryanair. So big question marks about where horses are going to go, I guess. But Factify was very good in the race last year. He deserves to be favourite at this stage. He probably could go off short, but I do think there'll be some depth in behind, and there'll be reasons to not necessarily take him on and expect him to get beat, but there'll be reasons to find bets elsewhere in the race. So we'll leave that one as it is. Moving on to Friday, which is, for me, the hardest race, well, the hardest day to sort of get yourself out. Typically, the Tuesday, the Chairman's Day, has been the easiest day. We've seen that with prices of favourites and horses that do go and win the race. Now the Mare's Hurdles move, that's going to change that a little bit. Wednesday's been another one that's an all right day to get stuck in there. We've had lots of bumper winners, Ballymore winners, Brown Advisory winners. Even the cross-country race was an easier thing. But the changes to some of those races means Wednesday's what it is. Thursday's a tricky one. And then coming into Friday, I feel like there's some opportunities, but it's a hard day for punting. So with that thrown out there to start with in terms of, I guess, probably being a bit cautious going into the Friday, especially trying to find a bet. I'm interested to know how the Mare's Chase market's going to pan out this season, because Brighter Days Ahead is going chasing. She's a 5-1 poke for this race. The trip should be ideal for her, and the track is the question mark about her, isn't it? She flopped in the Champion Hurdle. She got beat in a Mare's Novice Hurdle here. They're saying that she's always wanted to be a chaser, but she feels like the type that's not fulfilling her potential, and excuses are being made. Now, Dino Blue got beat a couple of years ago in this race. I can watch that back and see how Mark Walsh knew that he got the race wrong by letting the eventual winner get first run on him. But last year he completely put the emphasis on getting that inside rail and making sure he's in front. I think they know what to do with her now, and I think that she's definitely the right favourite in here at 7-2. Brighter Days Ahead could be star-spangling throughout the season and mean that Dino Blue's price changed. So I don't know whether the 7-2 is massive value at this stage or not. And there are some decent horses in behind. Like, it's a division that is split not far in terms of prices. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5, 6 horses that are single-figure prices in one place for the Mare's Chase at this stage. So an argument about how much value is about there, I don't really know. I do just think the Dino Blue's the right favourite, and would probably 7-2 doesn't look terrible. We'll just have to see how her preparation goes. She was running the 2-mile races like a Marine National that didn't necessarily go to plan. And, you know, she is just one of those, I think she's had a tongue tie and things as well. She's just one of those, the mares are tricky ones to sort of trust, I guess, throughout the entirety of the season. So that's where the Antepost prices, you can get them right and then it can be wrong in March, or you can get it wrong and then it can be right in March, if you see what I'm trying to say there. The novice hurdlers, I'd leave them a bit for the time being as well. The Gold Cup would probably be an obvious race to look at to try and think, if we're doing a Lucky 15 and we're thinking of horses at prices, who do we stick in there? And I know the way you're thinking beat no excuses Galloping de Champ last year. I know the ground might have been a bit too quick, but I don't know about that. Crazy how this horse had to be supplemented for a Gold Cup though, and lots of good judges said at the start of the season, well, one particular good judge said at the start of the season that they really fancied this horse at a massive price, then sort of to flop, and the price changed, and now they're training with the horse having the intention to come back for a Gold Cup. I don't know if that's going to really necessarily bring the best out of him. Galloping de Champ would be unbelievable if he managed to come back and win this, but I failed to see it personally. Factify, we talked about him in the Ryanair already, could come here. Might pan out that he's a horse that needs to come here from pecking order stuff. Got Gaelic Warrior, top price 16-1, as low as 10-1, favourite for King George. Look, he's won at Cheltenham, he won an Arkle, and he won that very well. I know you'd say that this is a longer and harder trip and he might not have the stamina in there, but he's one that could shorten up in terms of prices. So I feel like looking at this race that I know the way you're thinking, all intents and purposes of how he won last year, it's very obvious that he'll win this year. But is it that obvious, or is it a case of this could be a deeper renewal, and the way that I know the way you think is going to be trained this year compared to how he was trained before might not necessarily be to his benefit, and he may actually falter earlier in the season. His price may change a little bit. I'd rather play the positive spin on another way you're thinking and think they now know they've got a Gold Cup winner. They can go out with intention this season and they can actually pick up some prize. And I don't know whether I want to say they can train him a little bit harder, but they can probably push him a bit more in terms of the company he's keeping and the expectations they would have of him for performances. How that plays out after is we're going to have to find out through the season. And there's always been a bit of talk about horses going back to win a Gold Cup after, how it can leave a mark on a horse after. So that remains to be seen, doesn't it? So I'm sort of sat around the period of Gaelic Warrior at 16-1 favourite for a King George. Probably looks a bit big if you wanted to just stick something in the bets. Whether that's warranted of sort of a Lucky 15 or not, I don't really know. So I'd probably say at this stage for the Friday, Dino Blue for a Mare's Chase could go in there to complete the Lucky 15 type bets. If you're looking at getting a horse in the book, I see no reason why 16-1 Gaelic Warrior would not be at the forefront of your minds. So that's the 4 days covered, I say as quickly as I possibly can. I like to try and be thorough enough and enough in depth. And I know that there's lots of stuff that I'll talk about that you guys would agree and disagree with. Use the comment section below to let me know your thoughts. At this stage for the Cheltenham Festival, who you fancy, who you think could be good for a fun little lucky 15 bet, or on each individual day, who, if you've got some free bets or you're looking at sticking a fiver away on a couple of bets, just to get some horses in the book that you know you want to have in there and you think the prices are relevant and they're worth getting stuck into, let us know in the comments. The best thing about this game is we're all in the same boat. We're here with one objective, to share our opinions, share our views, and hopefully be able to turn that into a small profit by working together, discussing things, helping each other out if someone's made a reference that's not true, or there's been a change in something, or you've heard something. It's so important to share the information, and we are all here to work together to try and beat the bookies, I guess. So with that said, this wraps up the first episode of our Cheltenham series for the season. Again, like I said at the start of the show, let me know what you might like to see in it, or if you've got any thoughts or critique about any of this sort of stuff, or what you, again, might like to see, or talking points, or even regular features that could come in here. Maybe other shows are doing it and you like the idea of it. Maybe there's something you've always looked at a show and thought, why don't they just do this? Tell us, we'll make it happen. And I really appreciate your guys' support. So I'll say it again, if you could subscribe to the channel, that helps us. If you could like the video, that helps us. If you could drop a comment, that helps us too. But hopefully you've enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon.